you suck, insert company name here. There's a lot of negativity in YouTube videos. Maybe TikTok. I don't know. I don't watch TikTok. I just don't like very short content. I like to get a good meal out of the content. I mostly watch content for information, and I want to get lots of information. And so, generally speaking, I don't watch short form content. But what I do watch is a lot of YouTube and I guess other videos, documentaries, that kind of stuff, right? Um, the YouTubers and maybe streamers who cover games and other things besides games, but I'm just going to talk about games. Whether it's Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, board games, miniatures games, war games, whatever. A lot of them. I'm not going to say it's over half because I don't. No, I don't think it's over half, but there's quite a few of them who are very negative, and whenever it's pointed out that they're negative, they will often refer back to the videos on their channel and look at the titles or the thumbnails of these videos, and you can see that they'll either show you their video feed or they'll just talk about it, but they'll talk about it as if half of them are positive, obviously, because they have positive titles or positive thumbnails or whatever. But what a lot of them don't understand is that in every single video, even if they start talking positive, then they'll go into the histrionics of whatever negative thing they think about the company that makes the product or the product itself or whatever. Or just every single time they mention something they like about something, they'll then undercut it with a negative comment. And, it's like saying to someone, oh, that was really smart of you to say, when normally you're an idiot, right? And that's kind of how they are. And it's why people get annoyed and make comments about them always being negative, at which point they decide they have to address it and point out that they're not negative, as opposed to maybe being a bit introspective and saying, oh, I am like this. And they can own it and say, I want to be like that, and that's how I want to present myself. There's nothing wrong with that, really. It just means that the number of people who will like you and therefore continue to follow your content is diminished, because generally people don't like negative people. And how do I know this? Because I was like that, and I had to spend a lot of time doing a lot of, self-thought, thinking about how I came across to people, and, what things about myself that I liked and what stuff people didn't like about me. And I kept some of the things people didn't like about me because I liked those things about me. And I abandoned some of the things that I didn't necessarily like about myself either, and thought about, basically improving myself as a person. And this is what you do as you get older. Hopefully this is what everyone does. And I'm just saying this because everyone should do this. You should think about who you are and how you present yourself and how people view you. There's a lot of talk these days about empathy, and that's one of the best uses of empathy, or the idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and then you could view their life. That's a nice thing to do, and to think about how other people are affected by things. But also, you could then turn them around and look at you, and then decide for yourself: are these things I like about my character? Are these things I don't like about my character? And you can choose to keep them or abandon them. But the YouTubers, I think it's because they've been in the game for a long time, especially. It does seem to be that it's more common in YouTubers that have been online for a long time, and they focus on the things that they were negative about in the past, in their early videos, whether it's 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, 15 years ago, if there's very few of them. But they will always bring up something that really irked them a long time ago, or that is a continuing issue that irked them a long time ago and is still happening today, not recognizing that's clearly never going to change, right? The company has decided that's what it's doing if it's been doing it for 10 years. It's possible that, if you harp on them enough or nag them enough, they might change. I don't know. And obviously, there is a flip side to this. I'm sure someone watching this will go into the comments and tell me that there's this thing called toxic positivity. And I guess that term I've heard mostly in the toy world because people are upset with, I don't know, certain lines that Hasbro puts out or McFarlane puts out or Mattel puts out, and they think that there's some issues with them, but yet they're selling very well, so they're upset with people who probably are never even watching their videos, that they're still buying this stuff even though it's not worth that, and therefore the company will never improve because they're not being taught a lesson. And so they want to have some sort of embargo against the company, and they want everyone to listen to them because they think that their views are the correct views. And they don't even recognize that only 1% of the people that are buying these products are even engaging online about these products, right? So you're never going to get this message out. And the idea of this toxic positivity, I understand it. It is the opposite of the negativity that I'm talking about. But often, if you're talking about real life, I guess if you're talking about real life at a party, who do you want to be stuck beside drinking a cocktail? Do you want the guy that's always telling you say something and then they say something negative back? Or do you want the person who's saying something positive back? People want to hear positive things, and mostly people want to talk about themselves, and they want people to nod and say, that's great, that's great, that's great, that's great. And that's kind of what people want. And you could say it's stupid, but even you want that, right? You want the positive reinforcement of your peers. And, you know, a company obviously wants that too, but I mean, we shouldn't necessarily just give a company, you know, positive reinforcement all the time. I just think that we should treat them as if they're non-entities. They're not human. The people working at them are human, and in their human lives, when they're not at the company, they're human. But when they're at the company and they're towing the company line, they're part of some, I don't know, thingamajig or absorbicron or something like that, right? So the people that make the negative videos often will get people that are irritated by them in a way that people that make positive and undercut everything positively won't. And that's just the way that life is. Even though they are, you know, two sides of the same coin, one is perceived as more favorable than the other. And I understand, you know, having been someone like that, how that comes to be, right? A lot of it comes from insecurity, and a lot of it comes from, you know, maybe too much introspection and maybe too much inflated ego. But the people that are doing it online these days are their sort of pushback and say, well, I'm just being critical. It's fine to be critical, but you know, you can be negatively critical and positively critical. And I rarely see people being positively critical. They think that critiquing something means you can only say negative things about it, right? And you can only undercut things negatively and not undercut things positively. If you did an equal number of both, then I guess someone could say you're neutral. Or if you did more of undercutting things positively, people would say that you're a positive person. And critiquing is something I understand, and especially when you're looking at products and you're deciding whether someone should spend their money on their products. I understand people feel they're responsible when they're talking about products, and whether from their view they should promote the idea of someone spending their hard-earned money on that thing, except that they're only looking at it from their own shoes. They're rarely looking at it from the other person's shoes. I sometimes get my back up when people tell me how to spend my money, and I think that you should never tell someone how to spend their money. You could say, I don't think this is worth that, and then when they say, well, I'm going to get it anyway, that's the end of the conversation. But there are sometimes people that push back and say, no, let me give you all the reasons why you shouldn't buy that. You should never do that. So the idea that someone who is critiquing products should be telling people how to spend their money, I already don't like that idea. You critique them, you give them what you see as the positives and the negatives, and you give them a very good view of how you're using these products so that they can decide for themselves, regardless of what you think is positive and what you think is negative, because they may think the opposite about those aspects, or they may not care about those aspects, right? So you have to showcase the product and you have to give your own feedback, but it has to be very, very obvious about what you're doing, not just have it on the table and do nothing with it, or not discuss how you used it or how it performed or that kind of stuff. And my videos are very short when I just do a box opening of something, and I don't go very in depth. And one of the reasons is because I just want to show what it looks like when you open it and how I view the thing, and then let someone else decide for themselves. And I think that's how you should critique things. And I'll go to movies for that kind of thing because I'm very familiar with movie reviews and movie critiques. I've been reading, articles and watching, the two critics on TV, that one from Chicago. Anyway, I remember that, I almost never agreed with those people, but they presented things in a way that allowed me to decide for myself what I liked about the movie. Because I have this view that just because a reviewer says that a movie is bad doesn't mean that the movie is bad. And if 90% of reviewers say the movie is bad, that doesn't mean the movie is bad. All that matters is whether you think the movie is bad. So the reviewers shouldn't be giving you an idea about whether they think the movie is good or whether they think the movie is bad. They should be telling you what is in the movie, basically. And yeah, you'll get spoilers from that, but that's the only way you'll get real information about whether you should go to that movie or not, right? Is by knowing what's in the movie and what's not in the movie. And if they're just dancing around what the movie is and not giving any spoilers, but they're saying negative things and positive things, you aren't that person. You're not going to have the same experience. And I think that way about these products, these games, the things that come out. And so when someone is critiquing something, that's fine. They can give what they think are negatives and positives, but they have to recognize that those aren't universal, right? They have to recognize that just because they think that this thing is negative doesn't mean it's negative, or they think this thing is positive doesn't mean that it is positive. And they get caught in this idea that they're immune from being accused of being negative because critiquing, I guess, is inherently negative, when it's not. It's both positive and negative. It should be neutral. No one can give a true neutral review of something unless they're a Vulcan, I guess. Anyway, this idea of the negativity, I just wanted to talk about that, about how YouTubers present themselves, and when you come across someone who you feel in every single one of their videos is negative, and then they tell you that they're not, you're not necessarily wrong. They're just viewing it from a different prism, and they're ignoring how they come across, and they need to be a bit more introspective. And you yourself have to be a bit more introspective as well about how you come across in the real world, and hopefully you are. So, no one's perfect at that, obviously. I haven't figured it out. I've just done my best, and that's all anyone can do. And that's all I've got to say. Let me know. Give me all your negative comments below, and have a horrible day.